Tired of big tech clashing with your Catholic values? Fide Chat is now live on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. It's private, encrypted, and built by Catholics for Catholics, with features like parental controls and more. Connect securely with family, friends, and groups. Download Fide Chat at fide.email. Technology without compromise.
Some are noticing an apostasy going on. Is it the great apostasy? I don't know. When you look at the data, it's clear. The research data from CARA, a Catholic research organization, and the research data from Pew, a secular research organization, that the typical Mass-going Catholic, who both of those research firms define as someone who goes to Mass at least once a month, which is terrible, by the way, should be going to Mass weekly and on every holy day of obligation. More if you can. But the typical Catholic does not agree with the Church's moral teachings on contraception, the James Martin stuff, divorce and remarriage, on and on and on it goes. The average Catholic man, 90% of Catholic men, go to confession for sins of the flesh of some kind. 75% of women do too. It's across the board. Now, sins of the flesh, if you are going to confession for them and making a good confession, and at least trying, even if badly, to resist the inclinations that send you that cause you those sins to go to confession in the first place, you're still better than a large number of Catholics who don't believe those things are sins anyway. But a lot of Catholics, on paper, are heretics. Many of them knowingly so. They say, I know this is what the Church teaches, but my quote-unquote informed conscience, informed by the secular scientists and things, tells me the Church's teaching is something I'll take under consideration, but I'm not going to live it myself. Lots of that. So there's a point where you have to ask, are most of the Catholics who are in that position even Catholic at all? There is an apostasy going on. And we have an interesting article here from Info Vaticana, kind of about this. In the headline, Gabriel Kuby, sociologist critical of the German episcopate. The great apostasy is happening all around us. Now, you'll note here that great and apostasy are not capitalized, but when you say the great apostasy, you're invoking biblical imagery. You're invoking imagery from Revelation, if you want to call it that book. Catholics used to call it the Apocalypse. The book of the Apocalypse of John, as it's called in the Dewey, the Knox translation, and the older pre-conciliar translations. But you're invoking that kind of imagery. This prophesized great falling away of Catholics from the faith. That, as our Lord warns us in the Gospels, will he find faith when he returns? And this is a Catholic sociologist warning about this. Now, usually when we hear from a self-described Catholic sociologist, we're usually hearing all sorts of advocacies for upending Church's teachings on various issues. Not in this case. In late October, the German Bishops' Conference published an educational guide on the unconditioned acceptance of all inclinations and orientations of the flesh and identities of the flesh in Catholic schools. The document explicitly encourages students to define themselves according to their identity of the flesh and affirms that the diversities of such identities is a fact, normalizing self-identification as the various flavors of the James Martin's errors, including the errors of thinking you can just identify however you want, despite what the flesh has to say. Furthermore, it urges teachers to use language that reflects this diversity and to present Catholic sexual morality as a contested topic, leaving students to make their own judgments. The initiative represents a further departure from Catholic doctrine on anthropology and sexual morality. So far, only 3 bishops have publicly spoken out against the document: Stefan Oster, Rudolf Voderholzer, and Cardinal Rainier Maria Velke. These are the 3 bishops of Germany who have spoken out against the German synodal way and the German heresies. Pray that those bishops maintain good health and stay the course, and they adopt more orthodox positions than they have, because these guys aren't actually all that conservative themselves. At least some of them aren't. In an interview published by the Academy Review, Catholic sociologist Gabriel Kuby, an international authority on the critical analysis of the ideology of the flesh, stated that this drift is a direct consequence of the Vatican's failure to correct the German bishops. You notice something here. there's been a lot of people, and I don't know why they have been doing this, are still waiting for Pope Leo to excommunicate the lot of the German bishops, or maybe one or two of them to send a warning message to repent to the rest of them. But it hasn't happened yet. In fact, he was seen, photographed, smiling with Cardinal Botz, or Bishop Georg Botzing of Limburg, the de facto head of the German Bishops' Conference, the head of the German Synodal Way. In case you're not familiar with the German Synodal Way, there's the broader Synod of Synodality going on, and that's bad enough. But the German Synodal Way is basically all the things that were rumored to be coming out of the Synod, the Synod of Synodality, women's ordination, James Martin stuff, all that stuff, all of that coming out of the German Bishops' Conference, and explicitly so. It's like the Synod on Synodality at light speed. To the point where, before he passed away, Pope Francis told the German bishops, don't do this alone, go with the universal church, which is not the same thing as stop. It's just push these reforms with the rest of the church and submit to the rest of the church. Leo hasn't done anything to correct this yet. Now, there's a lot of things that we're hoping Leo will correct. So maybe some people think we should give him some slack. I tend to think the wait and see approach at this point, the time window for that is past. But the German bishops are some of the biggest promoters of these errors. They promote all sorts of evil doctrines, to the point where you can't call some of them Catholic. Some of these men are not Catholic bishops anymore. They're something else entirely. They are the liberal wing of the new synodal church. The sociologist continues. According to the sociologist, the episcopate that promoted the synodal path has attempted to reshape the church's moral teaching, introducing liturgical blessings for James Martin-type pairings, and now normalize expressions of this kind of identity contrary to Christian anthropology. The bishops are not fulfilling what they promised at their ordination, he lamented, accusing them of failing to safeguard the faith or protect families, seeking to keep their children faithful to Catholic doctrine. The sociologist denounces that Catholic schools are forced to adopt the James Martin agenda and ideology of the flesh, leaving families seeking to protect their kids without recourse. The main impact of these policies falls on children. It states the induced identity of confusion, family breakdown, and loss of moral compasses are creating an abandoned generation with rising rates of depression, anxiety, and hopelessness. The sociologist believes that the Vatican's inaction has allowed the German synodal path to advance proposals radically incompatible with Christian morality. While acknowledging that Pope Francis halted attempts to alter the church's hierarchical structure, he laments that the Pope never intervened when the German episcopate began dismantling teaching on the sexuality and marriage. I hope that Pope Leo XIV will take this battle into his own hands, he said, noting that the permissiveness toward these deviations is facilitating their export to other countries, and that cannot be understated enough. You'll see a lot of traditional Catholic commentators going after communion in the hand, girl altar boys, and all this other stuff you see at even very good ordinary form parishes. More conservative ones still have these problems. Those things were attempted to be stopped by Rome. And they came from Northern Europe, and then were exported to the United States. And it spread to the point where Rome stopped fighting it. They just issued some guidelines on these things. But they were never meant to be part of the will of the council. They were implemented through disobedience to Rome, to papal authority in the 70s and 80s. Finally, they just gave up. Until Pope Francis, you couldn't receive communion in the hand at a lot of the masses in the Vatican. You just couldn't do it. Couldn't see girl altar boys there either. Now you can. The revolution eventually caught up fully with St. Peter's Basilica, it seems. But it's the Vatican's inaction on this. Now, the question on this is it inaction? I'm going to bring into this the liturgy. You know how Pope Leo made headlines. A lot of people breathed a sigh of relief when he said, we'll be granting generous exemptions and extensions for Traditionis Custodes to the bishops who asked for them, which is markedly different than undoing Traditionis Custodes. And it's worth noting that most of the places that Traditionis Custodes was finally implemented in the last 4 years, it's been that long, have been in the conservative dioceses. where those bishops initially asked for an extension. Some were granted it, and then at the end of the extension, they were told they had to implement things. Others made the mistake of writing, instead of asking for an extension, writing to the dicasteries, asking for guidelines on implementing it, and they were given the most draconian implementation guidelines possible. I reported on these stories ad nauseum in 2022, 2023, and 2024. Most of the more conservative places in North America and Western Europe with lots of traditional masses were the ones who implemented Traditionis Custodes begrudgingly. There were very few of those holdouts left when that announcement was made. Was that passive? I tend to think of this apostasy and this handling of the German bishops in the same way. Was it passive, or were they letting it happen? Maybe as a laboratory experiment. Let's see what happens if we go with the more kooky stuff going on there. The German bishops wanted laity to choose who their bishop was. The German bishops wanted the laity to determine who could graduate from seminaries to become priests. The German bishops wanted laity in charge of what young men could enter into seminary in the first place. The German bishops wanted laymen, and especially lay women, to give homilies and read the gospel at Mass. They wanted them managing parishes and dioceses, and a whole host of other things. Was this a passive thing, or was this on purpose? Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I'm very curious what you think of all this, so let me know. Also, pray for everybody we spoke about today. These bishops, the Pope, all of them. Pray for them. And if things continue on the path they are, you will probably want to start figuring out, learning what your Mass options are in case things just get really weird. And I think they're going to. Maybe I'm wrong about that, though. But let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly does help. Sharing this on social media helps a lot, too. Again, pray for everybody we spoke about today. The Malachi Martin book is available on Amazon now. I'll try to put a link in the comments after this live stream is over for those who want it. And just in general, prayers and time of fasting is needed in this day and age. We are in a really dark time in our history. So always pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.